I also had a problem with the whole idea of the quote sacred. Back then, at least to my mind, the sacred was always something outside of myself. I wasn't sacred. Something that was wrapped up in the there and the then. It was somehow always in the future, but it was never now. It was always maybe there, but never here. I wanted my life to be sacred, but personally I identified more with the profane. The sacred was something I wanted to get to someday, not something I'd already was or had been. In other words, I had not internalized it. Now, it turns out that sacred's not a thing at all, but rather a process, and I just didn't know that. Sacred is a way of living, not an end state, not a thing. I know we label some things as sacred, but if you look deeply into them, they're sacred because of their use or the way they're used. In other words, sacredness is an attitude, it's an approach to life. I can give an example. This can be clearly seen in the way that the Tibetans offer a sand mandala. I hope that some of you have seen pictures of the group of Tibetans making these elaborate sand mandalas on a big table. It can take a week just to do it very, very fine. It's not the elaborate sand mandala that is the offering, because the sand mandala is just swept into a stream or a river when it's done. All things, like sand, are temporary. It's the gesture, the care, and intent while making the sand mandala is why they call it a mandala offering. That's the offering part of it. To use the same concept in talking about sacred, the sand mandala is not sacred in itself. What is sacred is the process of making and offering the mandala, being able to offer the mandala. Again, no thing is sacred in itself. It's just a thing. It's how we use or treat the thing that can be sacred. And the same goes with people. It's not the person that's sacred, but what kind of attitude the person invokes in us that can be sacred or make them at least sacred to us. Again, like many of the ancient wisdoms point out, the process is the goal. The process is the goal, not the end result. It's not the kind of, the brand of coat we'll wear, or it's not who we are or who we're labeled that's so special. It's rather how we act that distinguishes us. Again, it's the process of living, not how we end up. I mean, we all end up dying, so our value cannot be found just in the end, in the result of how we end up, but must be found somewhere else in our lives. I perhaps first saw this clearly when I met the great Tibetan Siddha, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, back in 1974, and I got a chance to spend a little time with him. We were together in a small room, like a professor's study that was filled with various mementos. And there I sat on a chair, literally frozen in self-consciousness, while Trungpa Rinpoche proceeded to examine every object in the place, in the room, with the greatest delight, picking each one up, holding it to the light, looking at it, turning it upside down, you name it. Meanwhile, I was unable to move any which way. Trungpa Rinpoche effortlessly and thoroughly enjoyed that room. Life is so much a case of monkey see, monkey do. It had never occurred to me until I saw him do this to be that free. I had never seen it done, and having once seen it, I never forgot it. Not ever, not to this day. And from that point onward, I began to allow myself these same kinds of freedoms. I mean, I had always been free to do just what he did, but somehow never knew it was possible or that it was permitted. That experience is just a minor example of what the Tibetans do so well with the mind. with what they call the pointing out instructions. They point out things. That's the true nature of the Buddhist teaching. I mean, all of us, sometimes we just need to have things pointed out to us. For me, it's the fastest way to learn. That's what a Dharma teacher's job is. And this is an important thing to understand, if you can. The Dharma teacher's job is to point out the true nature of the mind to us so that we can see it and experience it for ourselves. There are said to be 84,000 dharmas, each one different. We need to find our particular dharma path, one of those 84,000. You know, the one that will actually work for us, not just something that we can learn and memorize that still doesn't work. In my own case, I knew I'd found the right teacher when what my teacher pointed out to me about how the mind works, when it actually worked. I mean, I got it. That is how we know if it works. Finding a teacher is not easy. Even if a teacher has a great reputation, is famous Dharma teacher, if their pointing out does not work for us, then it's not our teacher. Or even if a teacher has a terrible personality, is rude, rough, or whatever, if they can successfully point out to us the true nature of our mind, that is enough. Dharma teachers aren't usually our personal friends. It's enough that they can point out the mind to us if they can. I certainly don't buddy around with my Dharma teacher of 30 years. Nothing like that. Anyone can talk about how to meditate as I am doing here. That's not being a Dharma teacher. That is not what I mean by a Dharma teacher. It's after we learn to meditate, then we need an authentic Dharma teacher, someone to point out to us the true nature of the mind so that we can actually get it, so that we can grasp it. That's what having a teacher is.